Hello and welcome to the Inside Stylists podcast, where we talk all about interiors with interviews with interior stylists, writers and the fabulous homeware brands that make a house a home. I also catch up with industry experts in the know and get them to share all their knowledge and advice. There's so much to talk about. I'm your host, Emma Morton-Turner, an interior stylist and writer with a ton of experience. I set up InsideStylist.com so I can share all that interiors love with you. So don't forget to head on over to the website for not only the show notes from today's episode, but regular interior blog posts and a whole host of inspiration. But for now, enjoy the show. Today's guest is doing a double whammy. In part one here, we're going to talk all about her lifelong interiors obsession and all about her work on her own projects, covering still life, lifestyle styling, prop and craft production, as well as trend forecasting and features writing. She specialises in stills and has also produced content for film, that's TV and online. And she styles events for press launches and corporate functions. Her clients range from country homes and interiors and good homes to commercial work for HomeSense and TK Maxx, Tesco's and Dulux, as well as online WGSN Life. Now, I haven't even mentioned everyone here because otherwise we'd never get around to actually speaking. Today we want to focus on her latest book, which was released just a couple of weeks ago at this time of recording, My Bedroom is an Office and Other Interior Design Dilemmas. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, Joanna Thornhill. Hi, Jo.
Hello.
I have to call you Jo, I can't call you Joanna. And I've just written...
only my mum calls me Joanna.
Oh, really? That's like only my mum calls me M. So we've known each other for quite a long time, but I know you as a stylist, but actually you started in TV. Is that right?
Yes, kind of. I sort of didn't really know that the styling world existed or what it quite was. All I remember is sort of watching, as a uni student, watching lots of daytime TV programmes, such as Property Ladder, Anne-Marie's The House Doctor, obviously Changing Rooms. God, yeah. All those things. This was sort of early noughties, so they were kind of big things. And at the time I was studying fashion promotion, and I thought I wanted to be a fashion stylist or work in kind of fashion marketing. But then increasingly I was like, I kind of am more interested in these property programmes than in dresses.
You're the third person I've interviewed who started off with a fashion outlook and fashion study and moved into interiors quite quickly.
Yeah, well, Sally Cullen,
that's who I was thinking.
Assisted in the past. She did my course before me, only a few years before. She's a couple of years behind. But yes, so I sort of wasn't. I was kind of thinking, wouldn't it be really fun to work decorating on these kind of sets? Like, I thought, I don't want to be an interior designer because I don't really know what that feels like. It's all about plug pop sockets and architecture and proper clever stuff. So I thought, wouldn't that be really fun? So I started contacting TV production companies and managed to get work as a little office runner, and that was kind of my route in, which was actually a really good starting point, because when you're a runner, it's kind of like being a style assistant, but for everything, and it's kind of super intense, really hard work, really long hours, like, crazy hours compared to the average interior shoot. So I kind of dabbled in that for a while, and then as I learnt more, I realised that actually the people that do the kind of designing and stuff, they're not the production team, they're kind of these freelance art directors, designers, stylists that are coming in to do that. So that kind of broadened my awareness of that world, and so I just kind of thought, I think this is the way I want to be going. I wasn't quite sure how to go about it, so I started out from being kind of a runner and a researcher, started doing prop art department stuff on TV productions, and then from there just sort of heard about names of a couple of interior stylists. So then it was all contract work, so when my last kind of art department contract finished, I sort of thought, right, now it's kind of now or never. I need to explore this world a bit. So I just sat and made a big giant list. I would go into Borders bookshop, go through the magazines, make lists of every single person that worked in the magazine in homes departments, looked through all the freelancers' work, googled them, just compiled this massive list, and then just sat at home ringing people really nervously, like, excuse me, would you maybe like someone to help you on a photo shoot? And it started from there. And I think the first job I got was with Sophie Robinson, assisting. She was doing a setup for the Ideal Home Show, which I think she still does quite a lot.
She did last year. I don't know if she's doing.
Yeah,
I know she's doing DIY SOS right now, so she might not be doing Ideal Home this year. But yeah, she did last year.
Yeah, but she was one of the first people I rang. I think she was like number 3 on the list. She's like, yeah, that'd be great. Come down, Ideal Home show. Rock up 9, give my name. And so I was like, oh, this is easy. It wasn't always that easy, but yeah. So it kind of went from there, really.
And then, so you kind of went from TVs into assisting stylists who were doing magazines and setups for like Ideal Home Show, like big room sets and houses and things. And then, how did you move into magazines yourself?
So I basically just contacted. So as well as contacting lots of magazine staff and getting assisting work with the in-house stylists, and I'd get the odd bit of sort of a week in-house just helping call in press loans or whatever it might be, so I did a bit of that. But I was also contacting freelance stylists who obviously worked in for commercial jobs as well, so that kind of broadened my mind into that world. I think I started out thinking my goal is to get a job on a magazine and I'll just have to sort of dabble about with this freelance malarkey until that happens. And then of course the industry kind of completely changed, and now there's so fewer magazine jobs, but equally so many more opportunities for sort of commercial work. I sort of just never got a job.
No, I was going to say, I think the only time I've known you to be in-house is if you've covered someone. Did you cover on Women's Weekly, or you just did regular features for magazines and stuff? I've always thought of you as being freelance, but associated with magazines.
Yes, well, I got I'd always just done freelance assisting for magazines with the stylist, or bits of cover, office cover here and there, that kind of thing. But in 2011 to 2012,
it was exactly.
Yeah.
I know exactly when it was.
So I was saying a couple of years ago, a couple of 9 years ago.
It, doesn't it?
It does. So I got offered a job covering a maternity cover for Women's Weekly. That it was quite complicated. It was Theodore Soms Illis.
Oh yes.
No, if I say this anyway.
Theodore was my deputy on Woman and Home, and she went on and I left. Then she went on maternity leave, and then Emily Dorr from Women's Weekly went and did a kind of she took a sabbatical, a secondment from Women's Weekly, and went to Woman and Home for a time, and then you stepped into Emily's position.
Yes.
Right, that's when I met you.
It's slightly complicated.
Yes.
So that was basically a year-long, well, at the time, a sort of 6 to 9 month, ended up being a year-long contract to cover the role of assistant homes and craft editor.
Very hands-on crafting.
Yes, so it was quite an even mix really between homes and crafts, and it was such a perfect sort of job at that point. I think at that point I'd been assisting, so I'd done all the TV stuff. I did that for kind of 3 or 4 years, being a little assistant runner there, and then was being an assistant on photo shoots and doing all that stuff for probably kind of 3 or 4 years as well. And I'd reached the point where I was getting my own styling work. It was sort of building slowly. It was almost like I'd reached a bit of a crux point where I didn't want to let stylists down for assisting work if I'd been booked in, but I didn't want to turn down opportunities for styling if I was assisting. And so there was sort of quite a few awkward moments where sometimes I'd do a bit of one and sometimes the other. I'd make sure to never leave anybody in the lurch. But if there were situations where I was booked for assisting and a job came in, I'd sort of try, I'd sort out somebody else to cover me and then go do my styling work. So it sort of reached a point where it's like, I'm kind of going to need to take a bit of a leap, but it's that scary thing of, but what if no one employs me? So then this job came along.
Word show, I think.
Well, luckily it's been okay. It's actually good. But yeah, so it came at a really good time when I was at that point where I was ready. I needed to make a change, and it forced me to make that change because I had a job, salary and a pension.
You're like a grown up now.
Yeah, like a proper grown up with working hours and a desk, all sorts. So so I did that for the year, and it was really interesting. Really learnt a lot, and that was a mixture of shoots and writing features, and I had a weekly. Or what's it called? Sort of just home news page, with sort of just with various things, images from the press and mixture of craft stuff. And I think being on a weekly magazine was really interesting as well. And obviously it's a magazine that covers all sorts of topics, not just interiors, which was really interesting. We'd have our weekly meetings called a weekly conference, and you'd go in and listen to what everybody was doing, and everyone would sort of pitch in their ideas. And then sometimes we'd get to do things as well where we'd collaborate with fashion or the cookery or the craft department on sort of a big, we'd all have normally say like 2 pages each per week. So sometimes we'd combine and have, so you'd have like a 4 to 6 page feature but between you, which worked out really well, particularly with things like the food and stuff. So I could do all the lovely tabletop styling, and they'd create the beautiful food, which is not my forte. So it was very informative.
I loved that about Women in Home, is that you would kind of, even just being in the office, the atmosphere of knowing like what the fashion department are doing and what they've had come in, and then food would go, would you like to test this box of chocolates? And you'd go, yes.
The Women's Weekly Kitchen. We'd sort of make sure that you'd know there'd be certain days. It'd be like, they'd sometimes send, cake days. Sometimes there'd be like, emails around like on Tuesday at 2 we're testing Stollen. So if anyone likes marzipan, come
there.
Yes. Here with my fork. Ready.
I don't know if I've said this before, but we were next to a women's glossy, I'm not going to name it, in the office, and they called us Woman and Scone because we were always eating, and they were just eating sip nuts throughout the whole day. And I can see why. But now you're shooting all sorts of different things. You do lots of. We're going to get onto the book in a minute, but I've come here today to record this podcast, and I was shooting with Ollie Gordon, and I know you shoot with Ollie too.
Yes.
So you shoot Oak Furniture Land for them, and what else kind of things do you do?
Yeah.
What other kind of things do you do?
So it's a real mix really. So I do. So I've been doing quite a lot of Oak Furniture Land lookbook shoots for their press output. I can never remember when I'm asked what I do. And the last thing I did before this was a NDA, so I can't talk about
don't tell us that then. Do you still work on magazines? Do you still do features for magazines?
Well, I wrote a feature for Stylist magazine at the beginning of the year, which was really nice. I'd not worked for them before, but hopefully that might be something that happens again.
Lovely magazine.
It's really nice. And again, I think that sort of fast-paced thing of it was all quite last minute, but it's exciting because it's got such a big distribution. And, it was at the train stations and things. So that was really cool. Other than that, it's just a real mix of so various commercial clients, and whether that be styling press events or lookbooks or catalogue type things. It's sort of all sorts of stuff really. And then I also do monthly trend forecasting reports for WGSN. Do you want to talk about that? Because
that's really interesting. So WGSN, now I had to look this up because I couldn't remember what it was called, but it's called Worth Global Style Network, and it's basically like trend forecasting, and it's a subscription that you sign up to and get the insights into, all trends across all different mediums. Is that right? Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah. So it's a really big organisation, and they do everything from, they'll have sort of, this isn't my specific bit, so I don't know exactly how it works, but they'll have trend forecasters all across the world who will look sort of years in advance of sort of what's going on socially, politically, what are the new kind of technology innovations, kind of compiling all of that data together, and then sort of working that into, I think they'll have, say, kind of some broader trends, and then within those broader trends they'll kind of go more into macro trends of this is how it's going to filter down. And then when I come in, I'm sort of obviously one of many freelancers and staff writers that do this. I'll do monthly trend reports on emerging trends in a specific area. So often they'll sort of tell me the sort of thing that they're thinking of doing. So, we're noticing, a retro style coming back, but in a really light, Scandi kind of way. Can you do something on that sort of thing? So I do the sort of trends, and then I do craft trends as well, which will be what's the latest thing going on in children's crafting, or what are the things people are doing in terms of cross stitch or needlepoint or something. So I do one of each of those a month.
How do you research that? How do you know what is coming? Like, how do you know what the trends are? I'm always fascinated by how you can forecast trends years in advance, but like something as specific as what are kids sewing or needlework or whatever. How do you find that information?
I mean, some of
do you just know? You're in the know.
I just know everything. I don't need to look. I just know it. No, it depends what it is. The craft ones, I suppose because they're a bit more specific, they do take a bit more kind of digging around and hunting a bit, whereas the trend ones, quite often they'll say, oh, this is what we think we've sort of seen this happening. And I'll normally resonate and think, oh, yes, I've noticed that too. Now you mention it, I've noticed that too. There was a press release last week about that, and I went to this press show and I saw lots of that kind of trend there and that sort of thing. So, I mean, because the ones I do, they call them the emerging trends. So it's basically things that are sort of already starting to happen. They're not in every single high street store, but I'm not kind of predicting what's going to be the next blush pink in 5 years' time. I'm sort of working on what's around now. So it just really is. It's just quite varied, really. So I've got various kind of websites that I tend to look at that cover sort of trend-based websites. So I'll go to look at them. But also, the nice thing about these reports is, unlike editorial, I can feature what bloggers are talking about, what's on Instagram, that kind of thing. I can credit from anywhere all throughout the world. So it's not often, if you're working on editorial here, it's you're limited to UK brands or suppliers. So it's kind of really
good fun.
Yeah, and it's kind of, it makes it really interesting. And I always find it interesting. I'll sort of go and I'll kind of. Often I'll start with quite an open mind and just sort of go onto Pinterest or wherever and just sort of get a feel for what's going on and pull loads of images, and then I'll realise, there's, like, say, within my theme, so say new retro style, I'll notice, there's a trend for sort of these particular colour palette, and then there's another sort of trend within that for using dark woods again or something. So within my trend, I'll kind of divide sort of 8-9 different categories, and then you see things coming through, and then and it's just really interesting to see what people are doing putting on their Instagram. So that's what people are genuinely doing IRL right now. And then I'll look, and then like Sainsbury's has brought out a new range of macrame wall hangings, which sort of shows they're tapping into the trend and stuff. So it's just quite an interesting way to just have a bit of an overview of how it's all coming together from all the different angles, really. If that makes sense.
Does it take a long time to do?
Yeah, I sort of, because I generally know at least a month in advance what I'm going to work on, so I'm always I'm always keeping an eye out for things. So I do sit down for probably about a day to properly compile it all, and then another day to write it all up. But I'm sort of, every day there'll be something I see. So I'm always looking. I'm always screen grabbing things I see on Instagram or saving sort of photos from press shows and things. I must get the press image for that and that kind of stuff.
Do you know what? I've got a new system now, because I keep finding things on Instagram, and then I save it, and I think, right, but where did I save it? And I can never remember. So now I screenshot, and then I put it into an album on my phone. So if I want to do like a spotlight on feature for Inside Stylists, it goes on my spotlight on album and stuff.
That's
it's been
clever.
Brilliant. It's like my brain in visual form. It's almost like Pinterest, but on my phone without it being Pinterest.
Yeah,
it's like a screen grab Pinterest.
That's very clever.
Yeah, it's working at the moment anyway. So the reason we are at Lombok on Tottenham Court Road, because we're going to be going to your book launch, because you've got a new book out.
Yes.
So I actually featured your first book, Home for Now, which we were just discussing was in 2014.
Yeah.
I used to work on Ashika, and I think I did an email interview you for the book.
Did, actually,
because I loved that book. It was like so inspirational. It was all about how people can style their homes when they rent and they're restricted in what they can do. But it was like there were so many ideas in there. I loved it. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about your new book. So your new book is called My Bedroom is an Office and Other Interior Design Dilemmas. And that came out just a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
Very exciting. So do you want to talk about the new book and how did that come about?
Yeah, so my publishers, Lawrence King, approached me for the book. They had...
How lovely!
Yes, it was very lucky. It was Home for Now, I did pitch to my publishers at the time. I'd done a bit of work with them before styling other people's craft books. So they'll Seco Books. So they'll often sort of freelance out styling of if you've got a bunch of craft projects, they're going to make a book. So I'd go and style those projects. So I knew them from that, and I'd approached them with my idea in it, and that went from there. Whereas this book, because they'd seen Home for Now, they had this sort of rough idea for this book, and luckily, I don't know at what point my Home for Now fell on their desk, but they kind of thought, this could be the person to write it. So they called me in for a meeting, and it sort of went from there really. So the idea, the premise of it was they'd already brought out a book called My Garden is a Car Park and Other Design Dilemmas, which was about gardens and what to do if your garden is like a car park, but also many, many other things. But it was the same kind of format, this sort of very bite-sized, dipping in, and for people that you might not necessarily have a big garden, you might just be someone who does have a little yardie car park garden or a balcony or something. It's not kind of for your Monty Don, Alan Titchmarsh types necessarily.
You don't know any, was it Latin names for anything?
Yes, exactly, that sort of thing. So they brought that book out, and that had just come out and was doing quite well, and they thought it was a concept that could be applied to interiors. So I went to have a chat with them about it, and it all turned out quite well.
Yeah. So if I can just describe your book, it's a really lovely size. It's like it's like a reduced A4 size, and on one page you've got like a full page image, and then on another page you've got the dilemma, and then your answer to that dilemma, and it covers everything. It's obviously it's not just bedrooms and offices; it's every room in the house, and it's just kind of clever ideas on how to kind of overcome different issues. How did they have the questions kind of in mind that they wanted to cover? Did you have to come up with loads of problems to solve?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was such a long time ago. We first spoke about this in October or autumn of 2016.
Oh wow!
It's been a really long time.
3 years ago.
Yeah,
or 2.5 years ago.
2.5 years ago. Yeah. So it was. So I can't remember exactly what we said in the meeting, but it was essentially they. I think they very much let me take the direction or at least sort of suggest the direction I wanted to take, and luckily they kind of went with that and didn't really make any changes really that I could think of.
I'm going to tell you what happened this morning now on my shoot with Ollie Gordon. There was a social media lady there, and I said, I've got to leave early because I'm coming to your launch and we're doing this podcast, and I showed her the book and she sat and devoured it, and she said, I wish I had this before I bought my house. And I was like, that's so cool. So she's going to buy a copy, which is very cool.
Yeah, I think, just to little name drop, Jonathan Adler is quoted on the back of the book.
Yes.
He says something similar.
Well, there you go.
No big deal.
I have to say, I'm a fan of your writing. Even if it's like in a Facebook comment, because you're really funny. I think you're so funny. I hope you need to be funny when you're funny, but I think you write how you talk, and that's really conversational, and it's a really it makes reading books really lovely. So I think it's a really fun, I mean, just the title alone is really kind of engaging and light-hearted and fun. So it's a brilliant book to have done. We're not going to talk about it too much because we're going to do part 2, and we're going to do a little chat during the launch. So listen into part 2 if you want to hear more about the books. We're going to go into that in a bit more detail, how you kind of got it off the ground and what it was like writing it and all those kind of behind-the-scenes things. What's next for you then? Have you got another book in you?
Well, I mean, I've got I've sort of got a few half-baked ideas. I've not got anything commissioned or sort of in the pipeline really, but yeah, I've got a few sort of thoughts. I mean, it's such a long process writing the books in the first place, but I would like to do another book. I mean, work-wise, I've got more lookbook shoots coming up for Oak Furniture Land, and my WGSN reports are an ongoing thing. But other than that, I kind of taking stock really, I guess, now. With the book's only just come out, so I kind of want to see what kind of happens with that really.
Because you've got it came out, was it on, I can't remember what day it came out, but I know it was in, it's been in newspapers, it's been really well shared in the newspaper press, so it's done really well there.
Yeah, it's had some really good press. I've been very lucky, my publishers have done a really good job with that. I can't really take credit for for the coverage, but yeah, no, it's been great sort of seeing it all over. So yeah, hopefully it might. I don't really know what I would like from it, but
it's exciting just to see what comes around the corner from it, isn't it?
Yes.
What transpires.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think what has kind of come across from a lot of things people have said is, like you said, this sort of the way I write. It's quite conversational and chatty, and I like to think very sort of practical and accessible as well.
It's like a friend is telling you, this is what I would do. If you try this, that or the other, you might find it works for you. It's a very, very approachable and friendly.
Yeah, so hopefully, I don't know, maybe there'd be more opportunities for things like that. Well, I did, the Sunday Times, they've got a home help page, and
that's right,
I wrote an answer. They contacted me, they've been in touch with the publishers via the book, and they said, would they be happy for me to contact them sort of ad hoc for when they wanted to print an interiors dilemma as kind of get expert comments. So I've done 2 of them, only one's been published so far. That was out, I can't remember, in February time, I think, but it's like that was really nice to be asked something like that. And again, I kind of wrote it in my kind of style, and they didn't really edit it very much. Hopefully that's because they liked it rather than because there's only one sub-editor doing every single thing.
I don't think they mess around.
So hopefully there'll be more sort of opportunities that I can't imagine right now that will come my way.
Yeah, well, very exciting. Well, we shall watch this space. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
And we're going to do even more in a minute, so it's going to be good. So yeah, guys, tune into part 2 when we talk about the book in more detail and get some publishers' insight into it. But thank you very much, Jo. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Inside Stylist podcast. You'll find all the details from today's show over on the show notes at insidestylist.com. If you enjoy the show, I'd love it if you would head on over to iTunes and rate and review it. It's the best way to help other people find the show, and I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, bye for now.